It was the coldest morning in 20 years. Snow fell in thick, relentless sheets, and the streets of Detroit were ghostly quiet, muffled beneath a heavy blanket of white. Streetlights flickered in the haze, illuminating two small figures huddled together at the corner of an old, nearly forgotten diner. A boy no older than 9 stood shivering in a tattered coat, his little sister clinging to his back like a worn-out stuffed toy. Their faces were pale with hunger, and their eyes, those wide, tired eyes, held a desperation that could melt even the hardest heart. Inside the diner, warm light glowed against frosted windows. The smell of bacon, coffee, and fresh pancakes drifted through the cracks in the door, wrapping around them like a cruel tease. And just as the boy began to turn away, accepting that hope would not feed them today, the door creaked open. If you believe in the power of kindness, second chances, and the beauty of unexpected miracles, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to American Folktales. Your support helps us share more real, heart-touching stories that the world needs to hear. Inside the diner stood Miss Evelyn Harris, a woman in her early 40s with a heart far larger than her paycheck. She had seen her share of broken souls. This part of the city had more than its fair share. Evelyn worked double shifts at the diner, often with aching feet and barely enough to pay her own rent. But her mother had raised her to believe one simple truth: no one ever became poor by giving. When she saw the 2 children through the window, something in her chest tightened. She didn't hesitate. She didn't ask if they could pay. She just smiled, opened the door, and welcomed them in with the warmth of someone who knew what it felt like to go without. The boy's name was Liam, and his sister was Sophie. Their parents had died in a tragic car accident just a month before, and they'd been slipping through the cracks of a broken system ever since. Evelyn gave them hot cocoa first. Real cocoa with steamed milk, the kind that fogged up your glasses and warmed your soul. Then she fixed them 2 plates of pancakes, eggs, and sausage, the same meal she could barely afford herself. They ate in silence, eyes wide, cheeks flushed with warmth. Evelyn didn't press them with questions. She just refilled their cocoa and slipped a few extra pastries into a paper bag when they left. That wasn't the last time she saw them. For 3 weeks straight, Liam brought Sophie every morning. Evelyn fed them quietly, never making a scene, never asking for anything in return. She learned they were sleeping in a condemned building nearby, that Liam had found ways to protect Sophie from being taken by child services because he feared they'd be separated. Evelyn started saving what little she could, old blankets, warm clothes, leftover food, to help them survive the winter. But then, one morning, they were gone. She checked the usual corners. She even walked through the snow to the place they'd been staying, but it was empty. No note, no goodbye, just silence. Evelyn told herself they'd been found by a kind soul, taken to a better place. But a small part of her always wondered, always feared the worst. 15 winters passed. Evelyn's life didn't change much. She still worked at the same diner. Her hair grayed at the edges, and her hands bore the marks of years spent pouring coffee and cleaning tables. She never married, never had children. Sometimes she thought of Liam and Sophie, especially on cold mornings when the snow fell thick and quiet. She'd glance at the door, half hoping 2 grown faces would one day walk in. Then, one rainy Thursday afternoon, just as Evelyn was finishing her shift, a sleek black car, a Bentley, pulled up outside the diner. It was so out of place that even the cook came to the window. The driver stepped out first, suited and polished, and opened the back door. From it emerged a young man in his 20s, tall, with a confidence that came from enduring storms. Behind him came a young woman with dark hair and soft eyes that immediately lit up when they met Evelyn's. She didn't recognize them at first. Time and growth had transformed them. But when the young man held out a small, faded paper bag and said, "You used to give us these," her heart stopped. It was Liam. And beside him, beaming with tears in her eyes, was Sophie. Liam explained how that single act of kindness, those warm meals, the cocoa, the safety she gave them, had changed everything. After disappearing, they were taken in by a small shelter in another town. A social worker helped them stay together. Liam studied hard, driven by a promise he'd made to himself, to someday repay the woman who fed him when the world turned its back. He went on to college, then started his own tech firm. Sophie became a nurse. And today, they had returned not only to thank her, but to give back in a way Evelyn never expected. Liam handed her an envelope. Inside was the deed to a new house, hers. Fully paid. A retirement fund. And a note from Sophie that read, "Because you fed us like we were your own when we had no one." Tears streamed down Evelyn's face as she stood there in her apron, stunned by the moment she'd once only dreamed of. The cold, broken world she'd lived in all her life had just handed her a miracle she never asked for, but deeply deserved. The customers in the diner stood and clapped quietly, some wiping tears. The cook, who'd worked beside her for years, wrapped an arm around her shoulders. That night, as Evelyn sat in the passenger seat of the luxury car, driving away from the diner one last time, she looked out at the snow starting to fall again. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel cold. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to American Folktales. Your support keeps stories like this alive, reminding the world that even one small act of kindness can echo across lifetimes. Special request, please share your thoughts in the comments. What moment in this story moved you the most? We'd love to hear from you.